It's time for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, answering your questions from the General's quarters every week, right here on Volquest.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and welcome to the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast. Hope everyone's having a great day. Enjoy a day with your family and eat lots of turkey and ham and watch plenty of football and get yourself ready for Tennessee basketball on Black Friday and get yourself ready for Tennessee football on Saturday against Vanderbilt. I'm Brent Hubbs along with Rob Lewis. Eric Kane stepping in for Austin Price in this edition of the Mailbag Podcast presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. He's Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store, focusing on natural products and organic remedies. That's Smoky Mountain Organics. You can check them out online at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. You can visit one of their 4 locations, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, and of course their location in Knoxville on Kingston Pike, just across the street, just down from Trader Joe's. That is Smoky Mountain Organics. We appreciate their sponsorship and appreciate their partnership with Volquest on the podcast. All right, guys, plenty of questions to get to here. And fittingly, we will start with a Thanksgiving question from Hang Up and Listen. Great screen name, by the way, Hang Up and Listen. What should the University of Tennessee be thankful for at this point? Rob Lewis, I'll start with you. If you're the University of Tennessee, what are you thankful for right now?
I think in your 3 flagship programs on the men's side, you've got 3 quality individuals running the show, and Josh Heupel, Rick Barnes, and Tony Vitello. I mean, do you recall a time, Hubbard, when it was like all 3 seemed like they were in this good of shape as far as the leadership?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there was a stretch in the 90s where Philip Fulmer and Rod Delmonico had it going, certainly, but basketball was all over the map at that point. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's been more than a minute. I'm not sure when the last time Tennessee's had the apparent stability that they have at this point in their 3 main programs. Eric, for me, I think the thing to be thankful for is kind of the flush of the last 18 months, kind of the fact that it feels like for the first time in a while, Tennessee is moving forward. That's not to say everything's perfect, but at least there's some plans to move forward, whether it's building facilities, enhancing facilities, or just putting some of the past behind them. We know it's not all completely in the past, but at least there's a feeling that things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I would agree. It's kind of like what the coaches say, snap and clear, move on. You're not completely out of the woods yet. There's a lot to, a lot to learn, moving forward, but you are moving forward, and I'll keep it simple here. I mean, your flagship program is football, and not everything is exactly where it needs to be. You got a long way to go, but you're off to a good start. And this has been a fun and impressive year for Josh Heupel. So if I'm Tennessee, I'm thankful that football, there's something to cheer about this year.
Yep, no doubt. The feeling of this one's a lot different than the feelings have been the past few years. Even though Tennessee went to a bowl game a couple of years ago, just the way this team has played, Eric, the style that they played, I think is something that fans just gravitate to. I mean, I said this the other night on a show. If you got a ticket to the game, you better get in the seat at kickoff if you want to see it, because something's going to happen fast. There's just not a filling out process to, hey, what are we going to do, or what's Tennessee going to look like here, or whatever. I mean, they are going hammer down right out of the gate, and I think that's something that obviously fans are really excited to see and have really enjoyed this year. Let's go to Pine Mountain Vol, who wants to know, how many scholarships do you think UT will self-impose on this class with the new rule that if you lose 10 players to the portal, you can sign 32? I think it's 7, not 10. How many has Tennessee already lost? Do you see them reaching that number and signing 32 this year? A couple of clarifications here. They do not self-impose based on the class. You self-impose based on the 85 number, not on the class. I don't think Tennessee's doing anything with the initials. Self-imposed numbers will be on the 85. I think, depending on how Tennessee spaces that out, how much they count against this current class, I don't know that you'll feel a whole lot of that. But in terms of what the number looks like in this class, whether it's 25, 28, 30, that does depend on how many transfers, Eric, and depends on how many super seniors come back as well, because you're you're playing with that 85 number, and you're also got a self-imposed number in there as well. I don't think Tennessee's going to sign 32 players or 30 players in this class, counting transfers. I don't think it'll get that high personally.
Yeah, and this is kind of why this is to be determined. I mean, this could come into effect in March. It could come into effect in June. I mean, we saw Tennessee sign 6 transfers via the portal, or maybe 5 after spring practice, and so it's about the super seniors that count, who all leaves. You could have guys come back and start out the semester and then leave right before classes start. So to my calculations, and correct me if I'm missing a few people, Tennessee's had 3 enter the portal during the season: Brian Maurer, Harrison Bailey, Morven Joseph. Those are the 3 off the top of my head. But again, that might change. That will likely change. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of football here in 2021. As soon as the Vanderbilt game's over, they start bowl preparation, there might be a few more. Wouldn't shock me, to say the least.
I think, Rob, that it's really interesting in the recruiting season or the transfer season. You have for FCS teams, for the lower teams, this was their week for a lot of guys to jump in. If you followed the portal at all and tracked the portal, you had Furmans, and you had kids from those level of schools all jumping in the portal this week. Next week we'll start the rush for the FBS teams for this small window. But then you got the next window that comes about in the springtime. It's like 2 free agency windows in college football.
There's one even before that, even though they can't leave. It's coaching changes in January. And even though those kids, I guess can't leave and enroll at that point, somewhere else for spring practice, but they can still put their name in the portal and start being recruited. But and then, as you said, after spring, another, I don't like where I am on the depth chart. I'm bouncing out of here. It's just new reality.
But let me just ask you both your opinion, because there is no right answer to this. Do you think the portal is more attractive to Power 5 teams in November, December, or do you think it will ultimately be more attractive year in and year out to those teams in late April, March? That window there. When do you think there'll be more talent, I guess, more upper tier talent available in the portal?
I really don't know, Hubbard. That's a good question.
Yeah.
And Eric, I meant to tell you, since you're filling in for AP, you're contractually obligated whenever me and Hubbard say something and throw it to you that you already feel like is obvious, you're supposed to go correct.
Correct.
But Hubbard, I don't know. I would kind of think maybe after the season immediately, because I think then you might get some like good players at Florida, for instance, that want to bounce. It may be a guy that's not bouncing because of playing time, but bouncing because of a coaching change.
So you think maybe because of coaching changes, the December window might be a better window?
I think maybe. I mean, because then I think a lot of the guys in the spring, I mean, if they're not playing, if they're third on the depth chart, wherever they are, I mean, how attractive are they to you?
Plus, you got to think about the spots too. I mean, if you're darting in spring, a lot of programs might not have room for you, or might can take one but can't take many. But I mean, if you talk about this window coming up, I mean, you can go ahead and sign, and I feel like that'd be the more attractive period because there'd be more available spots. You get them ready to roll in for January. So I mean, they both are. I just think there might be more opportunity here in this first window.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's something for everybody to kind of keep. One of those studies that one of the 8,000 people that work in football offices across the country with, some analyst position doing something is going to dive in and research. Because, I mean, if you're a quarterback and you're in a quarterback competition and you lose that competition, are there going to be better quarterbacks available post spring compared to January? I don't know the answer to that. I think it's kind of going to be intriguing to see kind of who's available, who's not available, what direction some things go as the portal and the transfer thing gets settled in. We're just in year 2 of it. And this is, again, this year's taking on almost a different life than last year did as everybody tries to figure it out. For some people, it was been a big success. For other people, the portal's been a flop.
I mean, it's a small sample size, Hubbard, but what about just the guys that Tennessee got? I mean, Hendon Hooker was an early portal guy, and that one's obviously worked out. And then Javonte Payton was late, wasn't he?
He was a late guy.
But then you see other late guys like Turnage and Haddon have not, they've not gotten on the field. So I mean, that's just Tennessee. I don't think, and again, it's just 1 year, but it's kind of been all over the place with the guys Tennessee got.
Yep. I mean, you got Dejoun Terry, who was a late guy that was taken late.
That's helping.
That's helping some.
Tremblay.
Yeah, Tremblay's a guy who's played a lot as well.
Juwan Mitchell, but that has more to do with an injury now. But he was a late guy as well.
Yeah, and again, maybe late guys make more sense in places where coaching changes are taking place, right? So if you're Florida, you're probably going to be more active in the portal later than you are earlier because you got to wait and see exactly what you've got in the spring. Kids got to figure out who's on the staff there. I mean, Dejoun Terry wouldn't have had any interest in Tennessee in January because Rodney Garner wasn't here, and we all know that Rodney Garner was the tie and the reason why he came. So every situation is different. I'm going to be curious to see kind of how the numbers shake out over the sample size of 3 to 5 years and kind of where everybody goes from there. Let's go to the next question here. What will the new capacity be at Neyland Stadium? Any news on future home and home or neutral site matchups? Will the VOS sign be in the new north end zone renovations? I'll start with the second on the last on the sign. I think there's a couple different places that they're looking at. They're dealing with the architects and talking to the architects with. I don't think there's anything finalized as to where that is exactly going to go in the stadium. I think there's two potential options there that they're looking at. One reason it's off of the Jumbotron on the south end is there was a safety deal there because of how high that Jumbotron was and some wind shear and some different things like that were a concern as to why they removed those to begin with. So I don't know how exactly they're going to do those, but obviously Danny White's going to bring them back. The north end is a possibility, but I don't think that is an absolute going to happen. New capacity in Neyland Stadium. I'm not sure Neyland Stadium, Rob, is a 100,000 seat stadium now, maybe with standing room only.
I know you've said that. That's a pretty bold statement.
I'm not sure the 102,455 is a
102,455.
Yeah, where somebody went and counted actual seats in that place. Now,
I think David Elliott stepped it off.
Now, you think he did? Now they're going to remove. Obviously, they're going to displace and move some people around. How many do they lose? I don't know. They're going to move around 45 to 5,000 seats or 5,000 tickets. So how many of those do they actually lose? We'll wait and see. I don't think we're going to know the final capacity just yet, but I certainly think that being under 100,000 is a likely thing. I don't have anything new on the schedule front. I mean, I think Tennessee's in pretty good shape in terms of where they are. I think in terms of doing your other non-conference stuff, don't you have to wait and see, Rob, what the SEC comes back with?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, once
how many are you going to play?
Get in here,
right.
I mean, it's almost certainly seems like you'd have to go up to 9. Don't you think?
Yeah, we know Nick Saban wants 10. He's wanted 10 for years. I don't know about. I mean, they played a 10 game season last year, so I don't know that you're going to see, Eric, dependent, and Rob too, depending on how they do that. I mean, how many big time non-conference games are you going to play if you're in a nine game regular season or a 10 game regular season in the SEC?
I think it goes way down.
And I think if you do just the straight divisions like you have now, or if that quirky idea of even pods, I mean, it's still 9 games. It makes sense either way. And so, yeah, you need, even though they're boring, you need the South Alabamas, you need the Bowling Greens. It's about scheduling and the positioning in the schedule. I get that, but you need some games like that on your schedule, and you're adding one more conference game potentially. I think they're going to go down as well.
Although, it makes it a little, it makes it a little, if the playoff goes to 12,
which we all believe it will, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to.
Then I can see it, I can kind of see scheduling a tough one here and there out of conference. It makes more sense. But as the playoff stands now in this league, I think it just hurts you.
Too much of a risk.
Yeah. Don't you think the tough ones will all be kickoff type games?
Yes.
If that happens. I mean, I don't see anybody playing a legit non-conference opponent in maybe the back end of the season to keep like the Clemson, South Carolina rivalry and
Florida State
games the last week. But in terms of the non-rival games that have been around for a long time, I don't see anybody scheduling anything other than a preseason kickoff type game, if you will. Which again, those are largely now a lot of neutral site games because of the money that's involved with that one. TGX, Cade basically said he's gone on Tennessee Prime, which is no surprise. Coach Banks indicated this week that Alante won't be back. He obviously won't be back since he's accepted a bowl or a bid or accepted an invitation, to the Senior Bowl. You guys have expressed doubt about Tyon returning. Any guesses on the other seniors who have a year left of eligibility? I think Jerome Carvin probably, and Hendon Hooker. I mean, obviously Hooker's the most important. I think Jerome Carvin's probably the second most important guy who's a potential super senior to return at this point. And I don't know. I think Carvin's going to come back ultimately. We've talked about Hooker a lot, Rob, on here, and Eric, I know we've talked about it off the podcast. He's got a really interesting decision, and I'm going to be fascinated to see what research he finds in terms of weighing the pros and cons of that decision, because it's not as simple either direction when you look at it.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's going to be totally dependent on what he hears from the NFL Advisory Committee, which I'm sure he's going to submit his name in January to get feedback. And I mean, he's got an interesting decision to make, because he's going to, you would think, put up monster numbers next year. I mean, him and Bryce Young, I think, indisputably the top two guys in this league that would be back. I mean, he could really raise his profile. Assuming
Will
Tennessee,
Rogers is back, isn't he?
I mean, I think Hooker's better than Will Rogers. I mean, how many of those kids at Texas Tech do for stupid numbers in that system and weren't pro guys? I mean, I think Hooker's a legit pro prospect because he's a dual threat with his size. And I mean, I think it's interesting. However, what if he gets a 5th round grade from the NFL and weighs that against maybe coming back and throwing for 3,500 yards and 30 touchdowns and maybe being a 2nd round guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would be curious to be, I'll never see the paper, but what I will be curious to see, Eric, is what the NFL advisory board says he needs to work on, because that's what those boards do, right? I mean, they come back like in the NBA, they come back and say, hey, this is the element of the game you need to improve on, you need to work here. What do you think the NFL is going to mark off on Hendon Hooker other than 1 year wonder? What does he have to show? I mean, he's completing 71% of his throws. I mean, taking too many sacks.
Yeah, I would say maybe internal clock a little bit, maybe year-to-year consistency, because he's never had a year like this before. I mean, his release is quick. I'm not a quarterback. I mean, I'm not a coach, but his release is quick. He throws an accurate ball. You can tell he can throw the deep ball now. He seems to be making the right decisions. So I bet it's more, maybe in his steps. He's erratic when he runs the football. And that's something Tennessee's coaching staff has said countless times, that it stresses him out when he runs the football, but it's a big part of his game. And so if that's going to be part of his draft package, then I think that might be some things that they mark off. But I just feel like there's a lot of things that go into this decision, whereas the easy answer is we'll come back, improve your draft stock. So, you'll have a name, image, and likeness deal and all that. But when it's sitting there right in front of you and you can go and start your next phase right now and start making some money now, I know that's a difficult decision.
And as we've said for weeks now, and he's going to be 24 years old.
Yep.
I think that probably factors in, but how much? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think other guys who could potentially come, I mean, Princeton Fant, I would think he would, that would certainly Tennessee would like to have him back. I think that's
Tillman,
a very real possibility. Yeah, I mean, Tillman would be going pro early. He would not be a super senior coming back, but I mean, he's probably sitting there looking at what's my quarterback situation looking like when I make that decision as well. But he's a guy that I think will explore the options as well, especially depending on where Hendon Hooker is in this process. So, those are some of the guys that have the opportunity. Of course, I know Josh Heupel said this week that he acted like they were not going to redshirt Latrell Bumpus, but I think we all agree that they're going to redshirt. They're trying to redshirt Latrell Bumpus and get him back for another year as well to help on the defensive line. That only makes sense considering he's healthy enough to play right now and has not played prior to the Kentucky game. He did not play in the Kentucky game. I think the week before was the last week that he had played. Now his challenge is to stay healthy. Same with Kayron Calbert, opportunity to come back. The biggest question with Calbert is, can he stay healthy when it's all said and done? So we'll see. Anthron wants to know any new names that have entered the transfer portal Tennessee might have interest in. I think everybody's looking at the Ricks kid at LSU. Sounds like Ohio State's the front runner there for him. That's probably the biggest name out there right now. Jahmyr Gibbs, someone UT would make a run at if he entered the transfer portal. Rob, if Jahmyr Gibbs enters the transfer portal, he may be the most high-profile offensive player in the transfer portal. He leads right now FBS football in all-purpose yards. I think he would be wanted by a whole lot of people.
And playing for and does not play behind a great offensive line by
Yes.
any stretch of the imagination. You wonder. I mean, he'd be close to home. I don't see how if you're running back, you don't like this system. I mean, I've not watched him a ton, but I watched a lot of his high school stuff because Tennessee was, I guess, kind of dancing around him a little bit. And to me, he looks like he'd be a really good fit. I think it would be attractive, just the style.
I don't think there's any doubt. And if you're him, you're looking for a place, to me, Eric, that's got a chance to win, and a style that fits what you and now I'm sure his belief is he fits into any style, and he probably does. Yeah. But where would give him the most opportunity to be successful and to win football games?
Was he committed to Michigan at one point in time out of high school?
No, I don't think he was. Remember late bloomer, and a lot of people were hesitant on him. Like Tennessee thought he was a defensive back.
And he ran for 1 million yards.
Yeah,
at Dalton.
He absolutely did, and obviously he's gone on to prove that he's an offensive football player for sure. I'll throw this one at you, Eric. Better chance to flip DeMario Tolan or Christian Cheeks?
Yeah, I would say DeMario Tolan right now, simply because he's more engaged with Tennessee. He reached out to Tennessee. They've been in communication for a longer period of time. Plus, he was here on campus back in the summer. Cheeks is relatively new type situation, but I think Tennessee likes them both. Tennessee's talking to both, but I would say, in my opinion, a better chance of a flip candidate would be DeMario Tolan.
All right, then his last question: your thoughts on who LSU and Florida might hire?
I mean, did you guys see that reports today about Mark Stoops potentially being an LSU guy?
I saw the tweet.
Seems like an odd fit. I know Bruce Feldman tweeted it out, and he's dialed in. Also knows there's a lot of agents out there putting a lot of things out there to get a lot of people a lot of raises right now. I think right now, if I were laying odds on Florida, I'd lay Billy Napier as the leading candidate for that job. I thought Napier was going to end up at Virginia Tech, but I think Florida may be trying to go fast to make sure that they land Billy Napier. I think LSU is the one that nobody really knows about. I think Jimbo Fisher is going to say no, Rob. I think he stays at A&M. Then it becomes, where do they go? Does Lincoln Riley listen? Does he not listen? There's some talk that he would or he wouldn't. We'll see. Mario Cristobal, does he have any interest in moving anywhere? Luke Fickell's not leaving Cincinnati till they're out of the playoff run. LSU's going to have a coach hired before then.
You don't think Lane?
I don't know that LSU is going to go down the Lane Kiffin path. Lane might be in a situation where he gets a big raise where he's sitting at right now, or wait and see if that Miami job comes open. I don't know. LSU.
I can see Lane down there.
Yeah,
I don't think. I mean, those people, they're still paying Will Wade. How's Lane going to scare him?
But they're running. They're dealing with everything that Ed Orgeron did with all the Title IX stuff and everything else. Do they want to go? Do they want to go deal with all that kind of stuff? I don't know. We'll see.
They're still paying Will Wade to coach basketball for him. So I don't think morals enter into their decision.
I think it should be a bidding war for Billy Napier, and with the in-state connection that he has with LSU, I think it makes too much sense. But I'm with you. I think it looks more like Florida right now. But if I'm LSU, I'm going after him as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure LSU. Rob, is it beneath LSU to hire an in-state coach?
I know they don't do that. I know that's some unspoken rule. But if they're smart, they would.
I don't know. That's a good question, Huber.
I don't know either.
I think he's a good coach.
I do too. I think LSU is the biggest unknown of everybody out there.
I think it's the best job.
Yep, yeah. I do too.
I think it's a really good job. I heart Vols. The following quote is from an article by Bruce Feldman regarding Georgia. Quote, population shift that started a generation ago helped turn Georgia into one of the nation's best jobs. Metro Atlanta's population began exploding in the 80s, and the result is a deep pool of talent that also happens to get some of the nation's best coaching. Georgia high school coaches tend to be paid better than those in their neighboring states, and this creates a wealth of highly developed talent throughout the state. With the mid-state seeing a similar population spike, and some high-profile coaches in the mid-state like Trent Dilfer. Please discuss how the in-state prep talent has changed since you began covering recruiting, and what would you do if you were the head coach or AD at Tennessee to keep these players at home besides win more games? Rob, I mean, look, you go back 15 years. I mean, the number of guys, it's not even comparable.
It's unrecognizable. I mean, if Tennessee if Phillip took 10 guys in the state, that was probably a terrible recruiting class.
Yeah.
And now, at least the last 2 or 3 years, there's 10 guys that will be on your wish list.
I mean, when I played high school football 10 years ago, it was nothing. It was nothing. And that's just 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
I mean, there were probably plenty of times when me and you were doing this that there wasn't a top 100 player in the state.
Yeah, I mean, there were years where it was like they might take 2 or 3 guys. Now it's like there's 2 or 3 guys in Rutherford County. So it's very different.
And it's not just Knoxville. I mean, how many years did we go when Knoxville didn't have a kid, maybe not a Tennessee offer, but an SEC offer? I mean, it was more common to not have one than to have one. And now, you got half a dozen guys.
Yep. And yep. I think in order to keep them in state, I think one, you need stability first and foremost. I think for the high school coaches in this area, I mean, a lot of those guys have a better relationship with assistant coaches and head coaches at other schools because there's just not been the volume of turnover at other places, And I think
fix the relationships for sure.
Yeah, I think that's been a huge part of it. And the other thing too is there's a lot of different variables in the state now. Used to, you recruited the high school coach, you had to deal with the high school coach, and you dealt with the parents. A lot of other hands, a lot of other variables in there right now that you've got to deal with and you've got to go through. For Georgia, the biggest thing that happened to Georgia, Rob, they started winning, right?
Yep.
When they weren't winning, Rodney Garner went down there and we all know who he got out of Georgia in one year. Those guys were bailing all over the place. So the biggest thing is winning football games. I know that's cliche, but that's the biggest thing you do. Because you got a generation of kids who have never seen Tennessee win. Right, Rob? You got 2 of them. They've never seen Tennessee win.
2007.
Yep.
Last time they went to Atlanta.
They just have not experienced
Did Eric Kane have a driver's license the last time Tennessee went to Atlanta?
Let's see, 2007?
Yeah.
No, I did not.
There you go.
I did not.
There you go, Hubbard.
There you go. That sums it up in a nutshell right there. Here we go to UT Vols 16-18. Really enjoyed listening to the Cade and Friends podcast. I kind of like that name, actually. Was that made possible by the new NIL rules, the new staff's media policies, or a combination of both? It's an NIL situation. Is there? I mean, the staff obviously has let these guys talk and be available, but that's a result of the NIL deals. All right, let's run through some quick ones here before we get out the door. Does Squirrel White sign with Tennessee? What are you thinking, Eric?
I think that anytime Georgia is liking you and kind of talking to you and getting you on campus, I think that's a concern. For me at least, I think it's a little bit too early to go there, but I think it's something that should be on the radar without a doubt.
Rob, now that the season's pretty much over, where did Heupel exceed your expectations? What area do you think he needs to continue to improve in?
I mean, whether it's Heupel or the whole staff, I mean, they've got to recruit better.
Yep.
I'm not saying they did a bad job this year with all the obstacles they were facing. So don't interpret it like that. But they have to improve the talent. I thought they would be good on offense. I didn't think they would be this good. And they didn't produce against Georgia and Alabama. Like they have some others, but like the teams that are in the middle of the pack with Tennessee. I mean, they've exploded on them.
Yes, I mean, absolutely exploded. What they've done in the first quarter has just been absolutely ridiculous.
And that's a product of the offense.
Yep, and the tempo, and the fact that Josh Heupel is going to be aggressive from the moment he walks in the stadium. Pope for UT wants to know: are there any other athletic facility upgrades that were designed, approved by the prior administration, already in the works? No, I think that's why you're seeing nothing concrete in terms of bricks and mortar with the baseball stadium at this point in time. So I think what they're doing, what they're getting ready to do in terms of Neyland Stadium and the Anderson Training Center, we're both in the works. They've tweaked both of those. I think next up, baseball, and then we'll see what Danny White can incorporate in Thompson Bowling Arena with some premium seating and some premium additions there. with some club seats and that type of thing. I think
media is getting ready to get moved.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's going to happen. There's a lot of talk about taking the current basketball coaching offices and turn those into a premium area for just kind of hanging out and meals and whatever.
Serving beer.
You know, I think that's certainly a possibility to take place there because you've already got access for those people straight into those offices. There's external doors there. It's a pretty easy way to incorporate that and move basketball to Pratt.
Like a second Ray Mears room is how it was described to me.
Yeah. Now to do that, you got to probably do some additions to Pratt Pavilion, and we'll see what happens there. I know Rick Barnes has got some designs in mind, maybe even written down on paper at this point in time. Again, running out of time here. Is the NIL a significant point for recruits when you talk to them, and are some schools making it a focal point more than others? Eric?
I just think it's like with anything, it's about relationships. I mean, when I'm calling these kids and talking to them a lot of times for the first, second, third time, and it's a wide net. I mean, you don't even broach that subject. But the more you get closer to the finish line and everything, you might have some kids talk about that a little bit. But mostly for me right now, it's a no. But again, it's something you're exploring. It's something you're talking about when you're close to committing to a school now with name, image, and likeness a thing.
And I know there have been a couple of basketball recruits where that has been their first question to the Tennessee coaching staff.
Yeah.
And those guys aren't here.
Okay. Sugarland Vol, predict the 4 bowl possibility destinations with your pecking order. Where do you think they go? He wanted percentages. I'm just going to get too confusing. All right. So what are you thinking? Nashville, most likely?
It feels that way to me.
Okay. And then throw Jacksonville in there. Tax-Slayer Bowl in there.
I mean, I've seen some people talking about Outback. They can't get that high, can they?
I think to get to the Outback, they got to have help, right, Eric? I mean, you need Louisville to beat Kentucky, and then you probably need 2 teams in the playoff, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's possible. It's certainly possible. But in terms of just playing the percentages, I would go Nashville, and then I would go Tax-Slayer, and then I guess after that it'd be Charlotte, and then Liberty's. Yeah, the Tampa, then Liberty. I mean, it seems like it's a Nashville, Jacksonville top conversation we're having here. Yeah, with an outlier potentially with Tampa, but again, there's some things that have to go your way.
Yeah, I think definitely the case. Rob, to you on this one here, how does your optimism following Heupel's first season compare to the optimism, if any, that you had following Kiffin, Dooley, Butch, and Pruitt's first year?
I think with all those, I mean, I thought Lane was going to get it going, but if Tennessee didn't get in trouble, because there was a lot of smoke that first year. And the other 3, I wouldn't say that I was down on them, but it was still very much wait and see mode.
Now, I wasn't covering the team with all these guys like you were, but I mean, after Pruitt's, first season, they lost the last 2 games by just getting blown out, right? You had that win against, no, that was 2019, or no, you beat Kentucky in 2018, right? When they were ranked, then you got blown out by Vanderbilt, got blown out by Missouri. So there was not a whole lot of momentum heading into that offseason for Pruitt's first year.
And Hubbard maintains that Pruitt killed his team after the Missouri game and gave him no chance against Vandy. Remember that, Hubbard?
Yeah, I think he did. I think he absolutely just annihilated them on the practice field. And, of course, they had all kinds of, I think, coaching stuff going on. Tyson Helton, who was in charge, who's calling plays, and all of that kind of stuff. They were a mess after that Missouri loss. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Ironically, I would go Kiffin because of the way that they played and who all they played against and how well they played against them. There was some optimism with Dooley after that first year. You had Jim Chaney as your coordinator. You had Justin Wilcox. They had recruited pretty well just in that late arrival by Dooley. So you thought he was going to be able to recruit some.
He had a quarterback.
There was a little more optimism from Dooley than anybody wants to ever give Dooley credit for, because I thought Derek Dooley's staff was really good. That initial staff was really good because you have Jim Chaney and because of Justin Wilcox. I mean, I thought Wilcox did more with less, as much with less as anybody. Maybe Tim Banks has done more with less this year.
Well, I mean, how many head coaches do you have? Sam was on that staff, right?
Later, not that first year.
He wasn't there the first year.
Yeah, okay. But Sam Pittman ended up being on that staff. I mean, he had a good staff when it was all said and done. There's no question about that. All right, as we wrap it up here. Last question: how do you think Heupel has grown during the season, and what areas of his areas of opportunity moving forward? For example, there were some clock time management issues earlier in the season that seem to have been improved and corrected. I don't agree with that. I think he's managed the clock well all year long. While coach has been an excellent play caller, I think there's opportunity to improve red zone play calling, and maybe he missed opportunities to play younger guys at times. What are your thoughts? I agree with the younger guy stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know that that's all Josh Heupel, but when you're up 40 points in the third quarter, let me see Brandon Turnage. Let me see Mohan, you know?
There was one situation, I believe, on the road to Florida where everyone claims he mismanaged the clock. I didn't agree with. There was another situation, I can't remember what game it was, that I completely thought that he fumbled that possession there before the half. But then he came back in Kentucky and made up for it, stole 3 points there. So I don't know if I'd agree with all that. You got to play younger guys. There's no reason Hendon Hooker should be in a ball game of 55-17 and running the football at Missouri. No reason for it. I know the staff trusts the veterans, especially in the secondary. Would have liked to have seen a lot of more young guys play there a little bit more early compared to, later on in this season.
Hey, Hubbard, before we go, can I had this argument with Chris Walker Wednesday at basketball practice? I want both your takes. Is macaroni and cheese a Thanksgiving Day staple on the table? It's not for our household.
All right, you got 30 seconds, Eric Kane. Go.
All right, so it's funny. We talked about this on the show this morning. Is it a Thanksgiving Day staple? No, but is it going to be on the table? Yes. So I guess the answer would be no, but it'll be on my table.
All right, here's my thing. It's right up there with cranberry sauce because you can open it in a can and be done with it. You can take cheesy mac and you can take like 7 of those bowls, throw them in the microwave, and you can do a family side. If that's your Thanksgiving side, is it just requires water in a microwave? I'm not sure it's a staple on your dinner table. Yeah, that's just my opinion.
Chris Walker went so far as to call my Thanksgiving Day table trash because it didn't have mac and cheese on it.
All right.
If you guys got cranberry sauce there, then it is trash.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. That's going to do it for this edition of the Mailbag Podcast, brought to you by Smoky Mountain Organics. We appreciate you joining us. Enjoy your day with families. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast every week right here on Volquest.